In our headlines on this Monday, December 8th, here in South Korea. Speaking at a fiscal execution review meeting earlier today, Finance Minister Yun-chul calls on government ministries to finalize their respective plans for 2026 by the end of this month to allow for the swift execution of related budgets starting on New Year's Day. Meanwhile, most of South Korea's 126 judges nationwide partake in a national conference either in person or online on this Monday to share their thoughts on the ruling party's commitment to judicial reform. And new government findings show 1 out of 20 residents here in South Korea has a migrant background, accounting for over 5% of the country's total population. Finance Minister Yun-chul has called on government ministries to be prepared to promptly put into action their budget plans for next year. The call comes in light of the Parliament's approval of the government-proposed spending bill of 728 trillion won last Tuesday. Our Jung-kwan covers his remarks.
Presiding over a fiscal execution meeting at the government complex Seoul on Monday, Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Economy and Finance Yun-chul urged all ministries to finalize their business plans for the upcoming year by the end of December to ensure swift execution of the budgets starting New Year's Day. Highlighting that the budget for 2026 was passed on December 2nd and that it marks the first time in 5 years for it to do so within the legal deadline, Koo emphasized that thorough preparation is crucial to support the stabilization of people's livelihoods in an innovation-driven economy. Last week, the Assembly endorsed the government budget bill of 727.9 trillion won, roughly $493.5 billion for next year, which calls for more spending to prop up the economy and on national defense. Regarding this year's finances, he stressed the need to minimize unused funds to maintain the momentum of the economic recovery and called on ministries for thorough monitoring.
Furthermore, the conclusion of this year's budget is very important in order to maintain the economic recovery momentum of the new administration. While the overall execution status of this year's budget is favorable, I ask that you meticulously monitor it and not let up until the very end.
He also added that both the central and local governments will make special efforts working together to ensure that the warmth brought from economic recovery reaches all citizens equally. The main budget is scheduled to be presented and voted on for its initial allocation plan at a cabinet meeting on Tuesday. According to the Finance Ministry, as of the end of November, 90.1% of this year's main budget has been spent, and 94% and 98% of the 2 supplementary budgets have been executed. Jung-kwan, Arirang News.
The South Korean economy remains on its recovery track for the second month in a row. Now, this is according to the Korea Development Institute on this Monday. A rebound in domestic spending on the back of government support measures has reportedly kept service production steady, but the construction sector remains in the doldrums. Exports, meanwhile, expanded over 8% in November on the back of chips and cars. However, in terms of export volume, the state-run think tank believes the pace of growth is tapering off. Also, lingering uncertainties in the global trade environment amid U.S. tariffs continue to weigh on non-semiconductor sectors. Industry Minister Jung-kwan says the $200 billion investment that South Korea has pledged for the U.S. over the next decade will go into areas that benefit both countries and boost opportunities for South Korean companies. Speaking on a YouTube channel this past Sunday, he pointed to nuclear power, critical minerals, and artificial intelligence as sectors of bilateral interest. He also noted that the U.S. hopes to build more nuclear power plants and seeks companies capable of constructing such facilities and related equipment, creating significant opportunities for South Korean businesses. The investment plan follows a trade accord under which South Korea has committed $200 billion in cash and an additional $150 billion for industry-led projects, namely shipbuilding. Battery giant LG Energy Solution has won an additional contract worth $1.4 billion or just over 2 trillion Korean won to supply electric vehicle batteries to Mercedes-Benz Group. The contract will run from March 2028 to June 2035 and will provide batteries for cars sold in Europe and North America. The contract comes after a visit by leading delegates of Mercedes-Benz Group to South Korea last month, during which they sat down with top LG executives. In other news, in line with the ruling party's campaign for judicial reform, over 100 judges nationwide gathered either physically or virtually to partake in a related conference on this Monday. Our political correspondent An Sung-jin reports.
As the ruling bloc continues to push for judicial reform, judges across the country gathered to discuss the matter. 108 judges out of the total of 126 attended the National Judges Representative Conference on Monday, either online or in person. This biannual meeting is composed of judges elected from courts of all levels and serves to garner opinions from frontline judges on the judicial administration and judicial independence. It also hopes to contribute to restoring trust in the judiciary and improving the judicial system.
Several important bills concerning the judicial system are currently under debate in the National Assembly, and their impact on the public will be significant. I believe it is our responsibility to explain the perspectives of the judges.
The two main agenda items were judicial reform and the changes to the appointment and evaluation of judges. The meeting also further discussed other items, including the composition of a judicial administration committee and the creation of a special court dedicated to insurrection. Earlier on the same day, the ruling Democratic Party and the main opposition People Power Party had spoken up regarding judicial reform as well.
The main focus of the December extraordinary session will be on the judicial reform bills and the proposal to establish a special court for insurrection cases. This session will be a moment for legislation aimed at improving people's livelihoods.
The DP ran through the Special Insurrection Court and Judicial Distortion Bill in the Legislation and Judiciary Committee. Presidents of courts nationwide have raised strong concerns about the unconstitutionality.
As debates intensify both inside and outside the National Assembly, the path forward for judicial reform remains uncertain. Continued dialogue among judges, lawmakers, and the public will play a decisive role in shaping the final outcome. An Sung-jin, Arirang News.
The U.S. has highlighted South Korea as a model ally that will witness special favor from the Trump administration for its dedication to defense. Our Park Chun-han has details.
U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said during a speech at the Reagan National Defense Forum on Saturday that Washington will grant special favors to model allies, including South Korea. Hegseth explained that countries that step up to share the cost of collective defense fall into this category, and added that those failing to do so could experience repercussions.
Model allies that step up, like Israel, South Korea, Poland, increasingly Germany, the Baltics, and others, will receive our special favor. Allies that do not, allies that still fail to do their part for collective defense, will face consequences.
He also hailed South Korea as a model nation that meets the new global standard under U.S. President Donald Trump's presidency.
And just last month, South Korea committed to spend 3.5% of GDP on core military spending and assume the leading role in the ROC's conventional defense.
At the same event, Hegseth clarified that U.S. policy toward China aims not for domination, but for a balance of power, adding that the U.S. will pursue wider military-to-military communication to ease tensions between the superpowers.
The second line of effort for the War Department is deterrence against China, through strength, not through confrontation. As I said at Shangri-La earlier this year, we're not trying to strangle China's growth. We're not trying to dominate or humiliate them. Not dominating China, but rather ensuring they do not have the ability to dominate us or our allies.
Hegseth's speech followed the White House release of a new national security strategy last Thursday, which outlines the Trump administration's focus on protecting the U.S. homeland, reinforcing its role in the Western Hemisphere, deterring conflict over Taiwan, and urging allies and partners to take on greater security responsibilities. Park Chun-han, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, recent policy documents unveiled by both the US and China appear to have omitted the word denuclearization with regard to North Korea, prompting much speculation here in South Korea. Our defense correspondent Kim Bo-kyung reports.
Both the U.S. and China made no mention of North Korea nor its denuclearization in their recently released security manifestos. According to the South China Morning Post on Saturday, China's military white paper released in late November omitted the term denuclearization of the Korean peninsula. Marking an update of a 2005 version, it said that China adopts an impartial stance and adheres to the right approach of working for peace and stability on the peninsula and the resolution of Korean peninsula issues through political means, instead of mentioning how it supports the denuclearization of it. The new U.S. national security strategy released by the White House on Friday local time failed to mention denuclearization of the peninsula as well. In the document released during the former President Joe Biden administration in 2022, the NSS mentioned Pyongyang 3 times, saying it would pursue diplomacy for the complete denuclearization of the peninsula while strengthening extended deterrence. The one released in 2017 from Trump's first administration also mentioned North Korea 17 times, saying the U.S. would work with allies and partners to achieve CVID of the peninsula. The omissions have raised concerns, with some viewing it as the peninsula issue being deprioritized by Washington. One expert says the importance of dealing with peninsula issue has been waning in the U.S. for some time, adding that there could be many more reasons.
Trump could think that the denuclearization issue could be a potential stumbling block to U.S.-North Korea summit diplomacy. Also, Trump is now looking for a grand bargain with China, not just on trade, tariffs, and economic issues, but also bringing nuclear controls and broader security concerns to the table.
Though acting U.S. Ambassador to South Korea Kevin Kim reaffirmed on Monday that Pyongyang's complete denuclearization remains a shared policy with the South, the expert says Trump could be considering peninsula issues as a pawn on a chessboard for him to bargain with China, though some hawkish traditional foreign policymakers who believe it is important to keep China in check might disagree with him. Now all eyes are on the National Defense Strategy that will be released based on the NSS to see whether it will mention peninsula issues. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
And there has been a fresh escalation in tensions between China and Japan. Tokyo is accusing a Chinese military jet of aiming its radar at Japanese fighter jets over Okinawa this past weekend. Now that accusation has been denied by Beijing. Our Lee Seung-jae has the latest.
Japan is raising strong concerns after a tense aerial encounter with China near Okinawa. Early Sunday, Tokyo confirmed that it launched a formal protest with Beijing after a Chinese J-15 fighter jet launched from the aircraft carrier Liaoning locked on its radar onto Japanese F-15s on Saturday. Officials say the Chinese aircraft intermittently locked on twice, once in the late afternoon for about 3 minutes and again in the evening for roughly 30 minutes. Japan's defense ministry says the radar lock was detected by different Japanese fighters that had scrambled to counter what appeared to be a potential airspace violation. Defense Minister Shinjiro Koizumi called the incident dangerous and extremely regrettable. In both cases, the Chinese jet stayed outside Japanese airspace and there were no injuries or damage. Meanwhile, China's foreign ministry spokesperson Lin Jian defended Chinese naval activity, saying operations comply with international law and warning others not to exaggerate China's actions. A spokesperson for the Chinese Navy said Sunday that the Liaoning Carrier Strike Group has been conducting routine training over international waters near Okinawa. According to Beijing, Japanese Air Self-Defense Force jets repeatedly approached the training zone, harassing Chinese operations and posing risks to flight safety. China said it had announced the exercises beforehand, called Japan's version of events inconsistent with the facts, and urged Tokyo to stop what it called slanderous accusations. The radar lock incident comes at a time of deepening strain in bilateral relations. Tensions surged in early November after Japan's Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi said Japan's military could become involved if China were to take action against Taiwan. Beijing strongly objected, saying Japan was interfering in a core sovereignty issue. 이승재, 아리랑 뉴스.
South Korea's demographic portrait is witnessing a visible shift as residents here with a migration background now account for over 5% of the country's total population. Our Kim Do-yeon covers this reality and more.
South Korea is diversifying at a fast pace, with 1 out of 20 people in the nation having a migrant background. According to the Ministry of Data and Statistics on Monday, the number of these people reached a record 2.715 million in 2024, up 5.2% from 2023. This also represents 5.2% of the total population, a threshold often cited by experts as the beginning of a multicultural society. The ratio grew even faster due to the Korean native population remaining stagnant. Under the ministry, the term migrant background constitutes 4 groups of people: foreign nationals who stay in South Korea for more than 3 months, naturalized citizens, second-generation immigrants, and those previously in statistical blind spots such as North Korean defectors. To capture these figures, the government utilized a new register census method for the first time and aggregated administrative data from 13 agencies, including the Justice Ministry.
The biggest significance is that these are the first statistics to cover the entire population with a migration background residing in Korea. We can now identify policy targets, such as North Korean defectors or children of undocumented residents that were previously in blind spots.
Critically, this population is young. Nearly 82% are in the productive working age range, providing a vital cushion for the country's shrinking workforce. Officials attribute the rapid surge to specific economic needs. A dramatic shift is already visible in the next generation. For young people under 24, Vietnam has overtaken China as the most common country of origin, accounting for 27.2%.
The rise is largely due to the inflow of foreign workers and international students. We are also seeing natural growth as these residents settle down, form families, and have children.
This is evident in the regional breakdown. The data reveals a heavy concentration in the capital region, where 56.8% of the migrant population resides. Specifically, cities like Ansan, Hwaseong, and Siheung in Gyeonggi-do province have the highest numbers. The ministry explained that foreign workers are flocking to these areas because they are home to major industrial complexes, essentially making the map of the migrant population a mirror of the manufacturing sector. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
And a bookstore in Cheongju City is hoping to boost reading among teenagers with the support of their older counterparts. Our Park Ko-nu tells us how.
A notice put up at the entrance of this small independent bookstore says that adolescents can take books for free. It promotes a so-called I'll Buy You a Book project that was launched in February, where adults visiting the bookstore can anonymously prepay for books. Then adolescents visiting the bookstore can take books for free, up to the prepaid amount. The project began from a suggestion made by a frequent customer who wanted to encourage and help teenagers to read more.
I really liked that books became more accessible for them. Seeing the number of books they took gradually increase showed that these teenagers don't actually hate reading, they like it.
There's only one condition for this project. The adolescents need to come to the bookstore on their own without a guardian and choose the books themselves. The idea is to help them discover their own preferences without outside influence. The process itself has been shown to slowly restore the communication between generations that had faded over time.
I felt that there was a kind of disconnect between generations. But through this project, the students receive warmth from the adults' donations, while the adults feel that they are investing in the future.
Some say that being able to choose the books they want without worrying about cost truly feels like receiving a gift.
There are so many books I want to read, but I can't choose all of them because of cost. So receiving this kind of support feels like a gift. It's my first time experiencing something like this, and it's really nice.
Word of this project has spread through social media, and more than 30 books are being donated each month. This project of sharing that started in a small independent bookstore is opening doors to teenagers who want to read. 박건우, 아리랑 뉴스.
On the entertainment front, K-pop girl group Twice has unveiled its concert schedule for next year at the Japan National Stadium. According to its agency JYP Entertainment, the group is expected to draw some 240,000 fans over a period of 3 days by expanding the concert hall capacity with a full 360-degree sitting setup. The concerts will serve as an extension of Twice's 6th world tour, with 3 shows starting April 25th in the neighboring country.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In Russia, the Kremlin publicly welcomed President Donald Trump's new national security strategy, calling it, quote, largely consistent with Moscow's vision. The 33-page document released in Washington this week warns of Europe's potential civilizational erasure and said the U.S. should focus on resistance to Europe's current political trajectory. But it did not cast Russia as a U.S. threat. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Sunday described the shift as a positive step. Meanwhile, the U.S. and Ukraine wrapped up 3 days of talks in Florida aimed at drafting a peace deal. But hours after those talks ended, Russian strikes were reported in Kremenchuk and other regions of Ukraine. In the West African country of Benin on Sunday, the government said it had foiled an attempted coup. This came hours after soldiers appeared on national television claiming to suspend the constitution. Beninese President Patrice Talon told citizens the situation was totally under control, praising loyalist forces for removing the mutineers from key sites. Explosions were later heard in the country's largest city of Cotonou after Nigerian fighter jets entered Benin's airspace to help secure the area. Officials said 14 people were arrested. The African Union condemned the coup attempt, and Nigeria called it an assault on democracy. In India on Sunday, authorities opened an inquiry after a fire tore through a nightclub in Goa, killing 25 people. Police said the blaze broke out shortly after midnight at the Birch by Romeo Lane Club in Arpura. Goa's Chief Minister Pramod Sawant said the investigation would determine the cause and responsibility, adding that 6 people who were injured are in stable condition. Prime Minister Narendra Modi offered condolences and announced compensation for the victims' families. Britain's Lando Norris has won his first Formula One world title. The McLaren driver finished 3rd at the season-ending Abu Dhabi Grand Prix in the United Arab Emirates on Sunday. But that was enough to secure the championship by 2 points over race winner Max Verstappen. It marks McLaren's first driver's title since 2008 and makes Norris the 11th British F1 world champion. Chu Ji-han, Arirang News.
After a mild day yesterday, temperatures dropped sharply on Monday. In Seoul, the high only reached 6 degrees, which is about 7 degrees lower than yesterday. Tomorrow morning will be even colder, with Seoul plummeting to around -2 degrees Celsius and most regions waking up to sub-zero temperatures. During the day, temperatures will warm back up to the above seasonal average levels, so there's no major cold snap expected. Around the East Coast, dry weather warnings have been in place for more than a week. With strong winds blowing, especially in mountainous areas, please be extra careful with anything that could spark a fire. Tomorrow morning will start cold at -7 degrees in Chuncheon and -4 degrees in Daejeon. Daily highs will rise to 9 degrees in Daejeon, Daegu, and Gyeongju, 11 degrees in Busan. Toward the end of this week, more frequent rain and snow are forecast around the country. That's all for Korea. Here are the weather conditions around the world.
Those are the headlines at this hour here in South Korea. As always, thank you for watching.